In the deep Siberian taiga, winter didn't arrive. It occupied. It settled into the land the way a heavy animal settles into a den, slow, unstoppable, and fully convinced the space belonged to it. Snow pressed down on spruce boughs until they bowed like tired shoulders. Wind slid through the trees with a sound like someone tearing cloth, and the sky stayed the color of pewter for days at a time. Anya Morozova lived alone in a cabin that looked small only because the forest was so big. The logs were thick, darkened by decades of smoke and storms. The door had a latch that always stuck. The roof creaked when ice shifted. It was not a pretty cabin. It was an honest one. Anya was 80, and her body let her know it every morning. Her knees argued when she stood. Her fingers complained when she gripped the axe. Her back reminded her of every winter it had carried water and wood. But her mind stayed sharp, sharp enough to count her supplies without looking, to read wind direction from the snow's drift, to hear when the stove was about to sulk. She had outlived a war, an epidemic, and 3 husbands' worth of village gossip, though only one husband truly, and he'd been decent. She had outlived her daughter too, and that was the one piece of time she never forgave. In the first years after Lena died, Anya considered leaving the cabin for the village, for noise and neighbors and less silence. But silence had a strange pull. It didn't ask questions. It didn't tell her to move on. It let her endure. That was her reason now. Endurance. And a stubborn promise to the memory of a child who had once believed spring would always come. Her day began before dawn. She fed the stove until it crackled like old laughter. She heated water in a dented kettle. Her tea tasted faintly of smoke because everything did, eventually. She ate black bread with salt and a slice of dried fish. Outside, the cold waited. On the worst nights, it fell below -40, the kind of cold that made metal burn skin and turned breath into crystals that sparkled briefly in the air. Anya's routine was small, but it was a map that kept her from getting lost in the long winter. She checked the woodpile. She cleared the step. She listened to the radio for weather warnings and the occasional human voice. She walked the short line of traps she still set out of habit more than need. A rabbit now and then. Sometimes nothing. Winter was never obligated to provide. That day, the storm was already building by afternoon. The trees blurred behind curtains of snow. The world narrowed to the cabin, the stove, and Anya's own breath. Near dusk, as the light turned blue and thin, she put cabbage soup on the stove and hung her mittens near the fire to dry. She was stirring the pot when she heard something that did not belong, a faint sound almost swallowed by the storm, not the wind, not the roof, not a branch scraping. A whimper, weak and broken, like a question asked without hope of an answer. Anya froze, ladle hovering. She listened harder, head angled like a hunting dog's. Again, a scratch, soft, uneven, against the outside wall. Then another tiny, rasping cry. Her first thought was foolishly practical. Some idiot dog had gotten loose. Her second thought tightened her chest. A child. A lost child would be death within minutes out here. She set the ladle down slowly. Her hands suddenly felt clumsy. She pulled on her boots, wrapped her red scarf tight, and took her lantern from its hook. Before opening the door, she paused, feeling the storm's pressure against the wood. "Whoever you are," she muttered, "you picked the worst night to visit." She opened the door. Wind rushed in, cold as snapped glass. Snow swirled over the threshold. The lantern's flame trembled but held. And there it was again, faint, desperate, somewhere near the tree line, not far from her own steps. Anya stepped out into the white quiet, the storm trying to erase her as she walked. The cold hit her lungs first, sharp enough to make her cough. She forced herself to breathe through the scarf. The lantern cast a small circle of yellow that looked ridiculous against all that white, like a coin dropped in a river. The sound came again, and this time it carried direction. Anya moved toward it, boots sinking into drifts that had formed since morning. Each step stole heat and strength. At 80, the world was full of bargains. You traded energy for distance, breath for effort, stubbornness for survival. She hated bargaining, but she was good at it. She scanned the snow for tracks. Fresh flakes blurred everything. but something had disturbed the surface. Small pits, uneven, staggered. Not rabbit, not fox. Too heavy, too clumsy. Anya's mind offered warnings in a calm voice. Don't go farther. Don't go into the trees. Don't pretend you're young. Another part of her answered, equally calm. If it's a child, you will not forgive yourself. If it's an animal, you can still turn back. She followed the marks to a fallen log half buried in snow. The whimper rose again, right there, close enough to make her skin prickle. She rounded the log and saw a dark shape in the drift. At first, it looked like a wet bundle of fur caught in snow. Then it moved. A paw twitched. A small ear, rimed with frost, pressed flat against a head. Anya took one step closer and her stomach dropped. A bear cub, very young, maybe a few months, too small to be out alone. Its muzzle was crusted with ice. Its fur was damp and stiff. It lay half buried, shivering in weak waves, the way a candle flame shivers before it goes out. Fear rose in her fast, hot, and familiar. Bear cub meant mother bear. Mother bear meant a disaster that walked on 4 legs. Anya turned her head sharply, scanning the trees. The taiga was quiet, but quiet didn't mean empty. It meant something was listening. The cub's eyes opened a sliver, dark, glassy, unfocused. It tried to pull away and couldn't. Its breath came in tiny puffs that barely disturbed the snow on its nose. It made another sound, thinner now, as if even crying cost too much. Anya's hands hovered in the air. A lifetime of rules argued inside her. Wild is wild. Don't bring danger into your home. Don't interfere. The forest balances itself. But winter had never balanced anything kindly. Winter simply took. Anya knelt, pain flashing through her knees. The snow soaked through the fabric immediately, cold spreading like ink. She reached out, touched the cub's shoulder through her glove. The cold of it shocked her. It felt wrong, like touching a stone. She hesitated, heart hammering. If the mother appeared now, Anya couldn't outrun anything. She could barely outrun her own thoughts some days. The storm pressed in. Her fingers began to numb. The cub twitched again, a weak, helpless motion. Hunger and fear were all it had left. In the cub's body, cold was a weight. It pressed on its belly. It pressed on its legs. It pressed on its eyelids. The world smelled like snow and empty air, and somewhere far away, a familiar scent, milk, fur, safety, was gone. Anya made her decision with the same stubborn simplicity she used to decide whether to chop wood in a blizzard. You do it because you must. She shrugged off her coat, and the wind bit her immediately, stealing warmth like a thief. She wrapped the coat around the cub, tucking it in as if it were a child. The cub hissed weakly, more instinct than strength. Easy, Anya murmured. Easy now. I'm not eating you. Then she slid her arms beneath it and lifted. It was heavier than she expected, dense and awkward. The weight pulled at her shoulders. She staggered, cursed softly, and tightened her grip. The cub wriggled once, claws catching on her scarf. Anya ignored the scratch and turned toward the cabin, lantern bobbing, breath rasping. Each step back felt longer than the step before. The wind shoved at her. Snow stung her cheeks. She could feel her own body shaking now, not from emotion but from cold and strain. Not today, she muttered through clenched teeth. Not in my yard. She reached the door, pushed it open with her shoulder, and dragged both herself and the cub into warmth. Inside, the cabin smelled like smoke and soup and old wool. The heat from the stove hit Anya's face like a soft hand. She shut the door with her foot and leaned against it for a moment, panting, her heart beating hard enough to shake her ribs. The cub squirmed, making a small guttural sound. Its instincts woke as the cold eased and fear rose with them. It snapped weakly at the air. All right, Anya said, voice rough but steady. I get it. You don't trust old women. That makes 2 of us. She laid the cub on a blanket near the stove, not too close. She had heard enough stories. Frozen men dying because they were put right next to fire, bodies shocked by sudden heat. Anya was not a doctor, but she understood the logic. You bring life back slowly, like coaxing embers into flame. She found dry towels and began rubbing the cub gently, moving from paws upward. The cub shivered harder at first, then steadied into a rhythm. Its eyes blinked. It stared at her, pupils wide, reading her movements the way wild things read everything, for threat, for escape, for the moment to bite. Anya warmed water in a pot until it was just lukewarm. She added a pinch of sugar and a small splash of condensed milk, stirring until it looked like thin tea. Then she dipped a cloth and pressed it to the cub's mouth. The cub's lips twitched. Its tongue flicked out, tasting. It swallowed once, then again, faster this time, hunger pulling harder than fear. "Good," Anya whispered, surprised by the tenderness in her voice. "Small sips. You're not a grown bear yet, thank heaven." For hours that was the rhythm. Warm, wait, feed a little, wait again. Anya placed wrapped tins of warm water near the cub's belly and sides, changing them when they cooled. She checked the cub's ears, its paws, the tip of its nose for frost damage. She worked with the careful focus of someone who had nursed sick animals before, and sick people too, back when help was days away. At one point, the cub snapped and caught her finger, not hard, but enough to pierce skin. Anya yelped and pulled back. "Well," she said, shaking her hand, "you have manners like my late husband." The joke came out before she could stop it. And then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Softly, breathlessly, because the cub's bite meant it had strength enough to be rude. She wrapped her finger, cleaned the small wound, and returned to the cub. It stared at her, chest rising and falling, still wary. In the cub's senses, warmth spread like a slow miracle. Its body stopped feeling like a block of ice and began feeling like something it could move again. The air smelled sharp, strange, smoke, iron, human. The floor beneath its paws was hard, not snow. It wanted to crawl away, but the heat held it. Hunger demanded more. Anya watched the cub's breathing deepen. The shivering eased. Its eyelids drooped. It slept, curled into the blanket, tiny claws tucked in. As she sat back, exhaustion finally caught her. Her arms ached from carrying it. Her knees throbbed. She leaned her head against the wall and felt a memory surface, uninvited. Another winter, a smaller body. Her daughter Lena, feverish and quiet, lying on a narrow bed while wind rattled the cabin and the radio crackled with distant voices. Anya had pressed a cloth to Lena's forehead and whispered promises into her hair. "You'll wake up," she had said. "We will have spring." Lena hadn't. Winter had taken her with the same quiet confidence it took everything. Anya swallowed hard and looked at the cub. This time the small body was still breathing. Still here. The world had offered her a second chance at a kind of tenderness she had once failed to protect. "Maybe I can do one thing right," she whispered. The cub stirred, made a small sound, then settled again. The stove crackled. Outside, the storm continued. But inside the cabin there was something new. A living presence that made the silence feel less like a grave. By nightfall, the cub could lift its head and drink more steadily. Anya fed it slowly and kept it warm. She did not pretend it was safe. She simply kept doing what needed doing, one careful action at a time. Endurance, she thought. That's what this is. And in the white quiet, endurance was sometimes another word for love. The next morning, the storm had not ended. It had merely changed mood, the way an old man changes from shouting to muttering. Snow still fell, but finer now. The wind still pushed, but less violently. The cold, however, remained absolute. Anya woke stiff in her chair, her back protesting. She had slept in short bursts, waking every time the cub made a sound. When she stood, her knees felt like they had sand inside them. She muttered a curse, then checked the stove, then checked the cub, because that order mattered. The cub was awake and hungry. It cried loudly now, not the faint whimper of last night, but a raw, insistent sound that made Anya's nerves jump. It crawled toward her in a wobbling shuffle, nose working, finding the scent of milk on her hands. "All right," Anya said, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "You're alive enough to complain. That's an improvement." She warmed another small mixture, still diluted, still careful, and offered it. The cub drank greedier this time, paws kneading at the cloth, claws clicking softly. For a moment it almost looked content. Then it froze. Its head snapped toward the door. Its ears flattened. A low rumble vibrated in its throat, small but unmistakably bare. Anya's skin prickled. She listened, holding her breath. At first, only wind, then beneath it, a distant chorus, long, rising howls that cut through the storm like blades. Wolves. Anya moved to the window, wiped frost away, and peered out. The world was blurred, but she saw dark shapes at the edge of the clearing, drifting between trees with the slow patience of hunger. Not charging, just watching, smelling. Her stomach tightened. Wolves weren't foolish, but winter made them bold. A cabin meant warmth, scents, scraps. And now it also held a vulnerable animal that did not belong there. The cub whined and paced, agitated by the howls, instincts stirring. It did not know wolves as a story. It knew them as danger. Anya returned to the stove and fed it extra wood. Fire was more than heat. It was a warning sign, a border. She took her old rifle down from the wall. She hadn't fired it in years, but her hands still remembered its weight. Her fingers shook slightly, partly from age, partly from the sudden understanding that she was no longer dealing with one helpless cub. She was dealing with a whole winter's worth of consequences. As if that weren't enough, the cub's condition dipped again by afternoon. It became restless, then suddenly weak. Its breathing quickened. It curled tightly, trembling, eyes dull. Panic rose in Anya's throat. Had she fed it wrong, warmed it too fast, not enough? The taiga didn't offer instructions. "Come on," she whispered, rubbing its side gently. "Don't you dare." The cub let out a thin sound and went limp for a moment, as if slipping toward sleep that was not sleep. Anya made a hard choice. She turned to the radio. Static. A crackle. The weather advisory voice droned about road closures and danger. Anya twisted the dial, slapped the side of the radio, and leaned close. "Ranger station," she said, slow and clear. "If anyone hears this, I have a bear cub at my cabin, very young, found half frozen. It's alive, but not stable." Silence, then a faint voice. "Repeat. You said bear cub?" "Yes," Anya snapped. "I'm old, not drunk." A pause, then the voice shifted into professional urgency. "Give your location." Anya described it in the language of the taiga. The river bend that looked like a hook, the old logging track, the stand of larch near the broken bridge. The ranger understood. "We'll come," the voice said. "But the storm—" "I know the storm," Anya said, jaw tight. "It's trying to break my roof. Keep the cub warm. Do not go outside. We'll send a snowmobile team when the wind eases." Anya shut off the radio and exhaled, shaky. She looked at the cub, whose breath fluttered like a trapped bird. "Help is coming," she told it. "Not fast. Nothing is fast here." Night fell, and the wolves came closer. Their howls rose and fell outside the cabin, testing the darkness. Anya barricaded the door with a chair and a table, not because it would stop determined predators, but because it made her feel less exposed. She kept the stove fed, rationing wood with careful math. She could not afford to burn through everything in one night. Sometime after midnight, the cub panicked. It bolted across the cabin, knocking a pot to the floor. The clang rang loud, startling even Anya. The cub slammed into the wall, spun, and lunged at her sleeve. Teeth caught wool. Claws scraped her wrist. Pain flared. Anya stumbled back, breath bursting from her lungs. For an instant, fear surged so hard she tasted metal. She imagined herself falling, breaking something, dying on the floor while the cub clawed and the wolves waited outside. "Stop!" she shouted, sharper than she intended. The cub froze, eyes locked on her, chest heaving. It looked suddenly less like a rescued baby and more like what it truly was. Wildness with teeth, not evil, not cruel, simply terrified and confused in a human den. Anya forced her breathing to slow. She lowered herself into a chair, making herself smaller. She kept her voice calm. "Easy," she said softly. "No one is hurting you. You're warm. You're alive. Don't waste it." The cub's ears twitched. It backed into a corner, pressing its body against the logs as if trying to vanish. Its breathing eased by tiny degrees. Anya wrapped her scratched wrist and sat near the stove, watching the cub through the half-dark. Outside, the wolves' voices faded, as if they too were waiting for weakness. Kindness, Anya thought, was not soft out here. It was work. It was risk. It was paying a cost with your own tired body and hoping the forest didn't demand more. She stayed awake until dawn. Morning came gray and quiet. The storm loosened its grip. Snow still drifted, but the wind no longer screamed. The trees swayed instead of thrashing. The taiga felt as if it had paused to consider what it had done. Anya turned on the radio, hands stiff. Static, then a clearer voice. Morozova cabin. Do you copy? Anya's throat tightened with relief. I copy, she said. I'm still here. The cub is still alive. So am I, though my joints have filed complaints. A brief laugh crackled through the speaker. We're on our way. 2 snowmobiles. We should reach you in a couple of hours. When the engines finally arrived, the sound cut through the quiet like a knife, and Anya felt her body sag with exhaustion she had been holding back. She opened the door to find 2 rangers in white gear, faces rimed with frost. The older one had a beard like a snowdrift. The younger one's eyes were sharp, moving constantly. They stepped inside and stopped when they saw the cub near the stove. Well, the older ranger said softly, you weren't exaggerating. Do I look like I exaggerate? Anya replied, though she knew she looked like a woman who had wrestled winter all night. Hair wild, scarf crooked, hands stained with soot. The younger ranger unpacked a padded crate and warming packs. The older ranger crouched at a careful distance, speaking low, not to charm the cub, but to keep the air calm. We'll assess, then look for the mother, he said to Anya. If she's nearby, reunion is best. If not, we take it to rehab. The word reunion struck Anya harder than she expected. She looked at the cub, which watched the newcomers with wary tension. The cub's small body trembled, but its eyes were brighter than yesterday. They warmed the cub with professional care and offered a bottle. The cub drank, then paused, sniffing the air as if it sensed something familiar beyond the cabin walls. Outside, the older ranger found tracks, large prints, half filled with snow but still readable. Adult bear, not old, not far. She's close, he murmured. Anya insisted on coming. The younger ranger tried to object, then saw her expression and decided arguing with Anya Morozova was more dangerous than the forest. They moved through the trees slowly, rangers scanning, Anya watching her footing. The snow was quieter here under branches. The air smelled of pine and cold earth. Anya's breath came in short, careful bursts. Her chest ached with every uphill step, but she refused to be left behind. They found a sheltered hollow where roots formed a natural pocket. The air carried a musky scent, strong enough to make Anya's stomach tighten. The cub, inside the crate, began to stir, making soft chuffing sounds, a call that seemed older than its own short life. The forest answered with movement. A dark shape emerged between trees, massive, silent, and wholly present. The mother bear stepped into view, her head low, her nose working. Her fur was thick and dark against the snow, and her shoulders rolled under it like hills moving. Anya's mouth went dry. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs would not have obeyed anyway. She stood perfectly still, hands clenched inside her mittens. The mother bear did not charge. She watched. She listened. The older ranger opened the crate and stepped back. The cub scrambled out, wobbling on weak legs. It hesitated, then took a few clumsy steps forward. It made a thin chuff, and something in its posture softened, like a knot loosening. The mother lowered her head and sniffed the cub slowly, deeply. The cub pressed against her chest, and the mother nudged it, guiding, firm and gentle in the way of animals that do not waste motion. Anya felt a sting behind her eyes. She did not cry. She simply stood with the ache of it, the beauty of it, the cruelty of how close death had been and how easily life could be returned. The mother bear lifted her head and looked toward the humans. Her gaze landed on Anya. It was not gratitude. It was assessment. Weight and distance and danger measured in one steady look. Then the mother turned. The cub stumbled after her, then found its rhythm. Together they moved into the trees. Snow fell from branches as they passed. The taiga swallowed them, leaving only silence and a faint track line that snow would soon erase. Anya exhaled shakily. The older ranger released a breath too, long and slow. That, he said, was luck. Anya gave a small, tired laugh. Luck, she repeated, and stubbornness. Don't forget stubbornness. Back at the cabin, the rangers packed up. The younger one glanced at Anya's scratched wrist. You could have been killed, he said, half scolding, half amazed. Anya lifted an eyebrow. I'm 80. Death has been circling me like a wolf for years. At least this gave it something else to chase. The older ranger snorted, a quick sound of approval. Even here, even now, humor was a small fire you fed when you could. Before they left, Anya stepped outside alone. The wind had calmed to a whisper. Snow drifted gently, soft as ash. She walked to a stump near the tree line and placed something on it, a small carved token, worn smooth by decades of touch. Her husband had carved it during a hard winter, a simple shape that was half bear, half hope. A promise, she whispered to the forest, not to you, to me, that I can still keep something alive, even for a little while. She stood there a moment, listening. No howls, no cries. Only the muted Siberian silence and, somewhere deeper in the taiga, the unseen movement of a mother and her cub finding shelter again. Anya turned back toward her cabin. The door creaked open. Warmth spilled out. The stove crackled. Her red scarf hung in its usual place, waiting. She paused on the threshold and looked once more at the forest, where tracks were already fading under new snow. Winter still ruled here. It always would. But today, in the white quiet, life had been stubborn too, and sometimes that was enough.